The Lanayru Promenade is one of many structures found within Breath of the Wild. This long stretch of road connects the settlement of Kakariko Village to the base of Mount Lanayru, home to the Spring of Wisdom that resides at the peak. One of the many shrines can be found here, located right behind the promenade's only waterfall. At the east gate lies one of Link's obtainable memories, and on some occasions you may even see Naydra fly through. But despite it being a location of a shrine, memory, and dragon, very little is known about this ancient structure. It's hard to believe that a location featuring such exquisite stonework has little to no backstory. And why build in this area specifically? The mystery surrounding this area is very similar to the Forgotten Temple. However, at least the book goes into much more detail about that place. It's clear that there was some purpose to it, as well as a bit of a backstory. It was made as a tribute to past heroes that came to Hyrule's aid. Unfortunately, we don't get a similar treatment from the Lanayru Promenade, just a bunch of rough designs as well as this small section. But before we delve into Masterworks, what information can we dig up from the game itself? Unfortunately, not much, but there are some interesting things to note, such as how the style of Lanayru Road is the exact same one used with the Forgotten Temple. The columns found along the path match those from outside the temple. Not only that, but there are carvings on the exterior of the Forgotten Temple that closely resemble a Loftwing's head. The developer notes on page 312 talk about how the design of this structure incorporates construction elements from Skyward Sword, examples being the Spring of Power, Courage, and Wisdom, and one more area that is referenced here, Lanayru Road. And guess what? We can see these exact same Loftwing carvings at the Promenade. So both the temple and Lanayru Road were most likely built by the same people. But who? You might first think it was the Zonai, as they were responsible for a lot of structures in the realm, but there are no traces of their iconic swirl pattern, and a lack of any boars, dragons, or owls. Our answer can be found on pages 412 and 413. We get to see a map of several ancient ruins made by two different parties. Orange represents structures created by ancient Hylians, while green is the Zonai. This tells us that the Forgotten Temple was made by the former, and since the same race constructed the springs and promenade, Lanayru Road was built by ancient Hylians. Another connection this place has to the Forgotten Temple is how both areas have trees growing out of the cracked walls. It tells us that these structures were most likely built in the same era. Unfortunately, this is where our information found in the game runs out. So let's take a closer look at that small written section of page 282. The first couple sentences are of no importance to us, but it's the last one that makes things interesting. In the initial designs of Lanayru Road, it was known as Spider's Nest Mountain. We also get to see two concept designs of this location. They don't differ that much compared to what we see in the final version. In fact, one of the broken archways in the picture looks exactly the same as the one in the game, but this is clearly a different layout. While we can locate a fountain in both, the final version doesn't have any of these cylinder-shaped columns. But if the concept art for Spider's Nest Mountain looks almost identical to the Lanayru Promenade, why have a name change? We first have to figure out why it would be called that to begin with. Breath of the Wild doesn't have any spider enemies. You do fight Calamity Ganon in an arachnid-like form, but the nest part implies that there would be multiple creatures. Well, since elements from Skyward Sword were used to build ancient Hylian structures, perhaps there were thoughts of adding Skulltulas into Breath of the Wild, specifically the ones found within the already mentioned Zelda game, as they are the closest to spiders in design. But after scrapping the enemies, it made no sense to keep the name and it was changed. There's another possibility though, because while there weren't any spiders in the game, there are enemies that resemble spiders. I'm of course talking about the Guardian Stalkers. My theory is that in the original designs, the Lanayru Road was going to be swarmed with these enemies. It would make traversing to the mountain more difficult. Like before, this name was scrapped since it would no longer make sense for the game, because the name isn't related to what's built there, but what had happened to the ruins. In other words, Spider's Nest Mountain was a nickname given to the road after it was infested with corrupted guardians. This shouldn't sound too ridiculous since a similar thing was done with the Forgotten Temple. It's not like that's the actual name. It's only called that because it was abandoned for so long that it faded from people's memories. Hence, it was the Forgotten Temple. This leads us back to the final question. Why was this area built if it's only a walkway? First of all, let's look at the definition of promenade. It's a paved public walk, typically one along a waterfront at a resort. It's interesting how the one we see in Breath of the Wild also has water. However, it's clear that this area was flooded, most likely due to too much water coming from the source of the waterfall. This leads me to believe that this place always had water running through it. It's just that the level of it drastically increased over time, resulting in a flooding. I believe that the road connecting Kakariko to the mountain was built into a promenade solely because of Mount Lanayru. It's obvious that this mountain was sacred, as it held one of the 3 springs, and only those who are 17 or older may enter the mountain. This is because others lack the requisite wisdom to be there. There's even a mountain nearby that is called the Peak of Awakening. And the thing about Lanayru Road is that it's the only pathway that leads to Mount Lanayru. It would make sense that a place leading to somewhere this sacred would feature exquisite stonework, resembling that of the Forgotten Temple, an area that was built to specifically keep records of the past heroes who fought against Ganon. Like the 3 springs, both the temple and Promenade have a history going back thousands of years ago. And this is the path that both Zelda and the champions would walk to seek out the final spring, as one of the memories shows them awaiting the princess's return from her training. And that's the mystery of the Spider's Nest Mountain. Since the book specifically referenced Skyward Sword in its design, and the Promenade may have been built because of the Spring of Wisdom, I did check out the location in Skyward Sword. I thought that perhaps the road leading to Skyview Temple was the very same as Lanayru Road, though obviously there were no connections. Thank you for watching this Breath of the Wild video. I feel like I've gotten a lot more ideas for smaller theories on this game, so I'm going to try and get out more in the coming months. Just mini videos that cover several different locations of the game. Oh, here's something I'd like to share. I was going to eventually talk about the Tower of the Gods from Wind Waker and its connections to the Sheikah, but Zelda kinda beat me to the punch. And it's basically what I was going to talk about, but just better, because all of Zeltic's videos are great. I'll have his video in the end card for this episode if you want to give it a watch. Special thanks to all my patrons, you are truly awesome. Links to Twitter, Discord, and my Patreon are down below, but never feel obligated to make a donation. Now if you'll excuse me, there's a Nintendo Direct going on this evening. Breath of the Wild 2, anyone?